Hello, hello. We are live yet again, and this is my author's chat of the week. And as this app goes and informs everybody that I am out and about, I'm going to keep my eyes open for this week's co-host, and then we'll get things going. And as always, we'll be talking about books, writing, publishing, and everything in between. So if you love bookish things, stick around and hang out with us. We'll be chit-chatting for the next hour, and yeah. So like I said, I'll keep my eye out for my co-host. Until then, hello! Until then, I guess the news of the week, which is not really big news, it's just more of an update, is the fact that I am closing in the gap and almost done working or completing the first draft of my current work in progress, which is the 6th book of the Jed Chronicle series, my young adult adventure and quest-based fantasy set in a magical multiverse. And I've been talking a lot about that series because currently the 5th book, I'm ready to get confused, I know. The 5th book has its current Kickstarter running right now. But like I said, I'm going to keep my eye out for my co-host, and I see you joined there. Let me send you that invite. Hopefully, if my phone works. There we go. Let me also make sure my volume's up because I always forget to return it up. I do the adjustments. Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I cannot see you, and I know it always starts off this way. I just wish I could recommend how you flip the screen if you so want.
I figured it out.
It
was like quoting me, and I'm like, no, oh, what? Why'd it shut off? Oh, yeah, there we go. Figured it out. I had to save it.
Perfect. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, and I'm just readjusting a couple more things on my end because that's just life. But I'm glad you're able to join me today, and we'll get things going in just a moment. But if you've never seen any of my lives before, they're pretty conversational. We're just talking about what we write, what we like, what our inspirations are, what we read, etc., so on. And if anybody who's listening chimes in with a bookish question or commentary, I usually try to point that out as well or answer those questions if possible. But just a little background, depending on how someone may be joining in the live, you may see things that I don't see or vice versa. So if you see any comments or questions popping up on your end that I have not pointed out, you feel free to mention them too because, yeah. Okay, cool. That was the background stuff. Now, to get things going, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and what you write, and we'll go from there.
Hi, I'm MK, or I go by MFK R, and MK Richberger. I have 2 pen names. I do horror and like dark romance under MFK R, and then I have like romance and kind of fantasy stuff under MK Richberger.
Nice, fun. Okay, so that's an interesting way to split genres because I always am fascinated when people choose to use pen names and what and why, but you sound like you have, is your horror also your dark romance? Is that the same thing?
So
okay.
I have like kind of like a cozy horror series. So it's like maybe 16 and up can read it. And then I have like more graphic stuff, so mature. And it's under the initials MFKR because it looks like motherfucker. And so it's funny, I couldn't resist using it. They are my initials, but I couldn't resist.
And I think it's a very smart thing when you're trying to determine if you are an author who wants to use a pen name, especially if you're going to be writing stuff that's maybe on, as we say here on Book Talk, on the spicy end, and then you also have stuff that are maybe not so spicy that you might want to distinguish yourself so people aren't necessarily shocked going one way to the other or vice versa. So
as warnings and triggers and stuff like, in them. And as I publish books, I've figured out like a better way system. I'm working on that so that people know and they're not just kind of shocked.
Yeah, and actually let's talk a little bit about trigger warnings. Sorry, I have an itchy nose right now. I was outside this morning.
Horribly.
But yeah, trigger warnings are something that's very interesting because they're something that I had not seen, up until recently, and I don't know if that is something that stemmed from the indie book community or if it's just a general push overall. I don't know if I've necessarily noticed it in traditional publishing at this moment in time, but it's something that's very smart to do. And where do you list them? You said you mentioned them in your book. Do you have them on like a website, or where can people find your that information?
They're in the front of my book. I have a page, and I think like KU and stuff usually kind of skips them, so it's kind of I'm trying to figure out a better placement. I've seen people put them in the back of the book, and I kind of like that idea because you can add a page and then be like, check the back, and then you don't get any like spoilers or anything. My first book, I don't have any in there, but I have put on my like Instagram. If you need content warnings or anything, feel free to reach out. Because when I released that one, I didn't even know it was a thing. I was very fresh to the scene, so I didn't know that was a thing to be listing them in the indie community.
Yeah, so. And I do think it's something that's newer, and it's becoming more and more utilized. Now, not everybody chooses to do that, but there are some very good reasons for incorporating, trigger warnings, content warnings in your work. And then again, it's a choice. It's a choice of an author to do it. And then again, where's the placement? Obviously, the book is a great choice to do it. If you're going to do it beyond that, the website, do you put it on platforms like Amazon or not? There is the debate on, you don't want to necessarily spoil something for someone who doesn't really want to, but you also don't want necessarily, it kind of helps filter out a reader that would not enjoy your book off the bat. And so that's another good reason why you want it to be accessible also.
Well, and so Storygraph, I kind of got into like the middle, like I try to do kind of like generalized, because I don't want to do like in tiny little nitpick pieces, because then I worry if I miss something that is a trigger, then people will be like, well, you didn't mention this. Yeah. I'm like, I didn't know that. Yeah. Because Storygraph sent me a list when I went to put up warnings for my first book is Journey. Mm-hmm. And the list was so long and intricate that I was like, never mind. Because if I miss something, and to your audience, I don't want to mislead anybody. And that made me like really nervous, because I had never thought like fire was one of them to add as a warning, or spiders. And I'm like, I wouldn't have thought to add, arachnophobia to a book.
Arachnophobia, yeah, because I can understand that. I actually knew some people growing up who had a fire start at the house because their house got hit. It was one of those freak scenarios where the house got hit by lightning, and the lightning kind of supercharged some stuff and actually started a fire on the inside, and was very scary for them because they were really young when it happened. And so for one of them, for years, was very tentative and had a mild phobia of fire and open flames because of that experience. And so everybody has different experiences, and that's the other question is, when you choose to utilize these content warnings, to what extent and how detailed and how many? Do you just do generalities, or are you going to try to hit everyone? And there are so many different people that consider so many different things to be a trigger. How do you navigate that for, at least initially? Because that's a lot to kind of just figure out.
Right, and I agree. And then you also have like the genres, so like the target audience and stuff, because the dark romance audience, depending on which section you're in there, like to use it as like a shopping list. Like, oh, these are the things I enjoy reading. They're not triggers. They're like what they want to see. And then you got like the horror community where it's like, don't do it. So you kind of walk this fine line of what you're how you want to present yourself, and what to which audience and everything.
No, I definitely agree, and I will admit I have not utilized and incorporated them myself, though I am considering it, especially going forward with new projects, kind of keeping in mind of like how I would potentially do that. And I definitely, when I'm in videos, try to be vocal about certain aspects of certain stories, because some of my dark fantasy is dark for a reason. I'm not necessarily in the romantic side of things, but it's dark for other reasons, and those reasons can be, jarring, triggering, upsetting to certain people. So I definitely get that, and it's one of those things I have to figure out going forward how I want to approach that, but it's a learning curve. Writing is a learning curve.
It totally is. I'm like in the middle of rewriting my first book, like from a totally different angle because I started that book when I was like 17, 18,
Hmm.
and I picked it up again in my 20s, and then I learned that I could publish it, self-publish it. So it's literally been through everything. But over the last 2 years, I just have learned so much that I'm like, oh, is this what I'm going to leave it out there, but I want kind of another version of it,
Yeah, I
you
mean
know.
that's you can. I mean that's the thing. It's like you can have re-release books and have new editions, and as long as you're very clear that this is an edition two, and like here's the change, give some reason why there are changes. I cannot remember for the life of me if where the line is where you need to get a new ISBN versus you can keep your same ISBN, just label them as a second edition. But there's
Yeah.
something I haven't done that myself, but I
I
definitely
haven't
get
either.
yeah, I
This is
definitely get the
completely different
process.
world. I'm
I
like,
do.
I used the Amazon ISBNs, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I haven't ventured into buying them because it's like, I don't know. I start going down that, like, looking into it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming.
And again, there's a lot, especially if you're a newer author and trying to figure out what you need to know to give yourself that good foundation and what you're able to learn and adjust going forward. That may not be hypercritical for you to launch a book or release a book, but it's still probably important for you to learn at some point. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, and it's interesting because, like, I think it's Canada. They can get them for free,
mhm.
and in the United States, you can you can buy a bulk of 100 for like $200 or so. I don't remember the exact price, but it's like, oh, okay, that it's interesting. Or you can do through Amazon through I'm Ingham Spark. They give each individual stuff, so like it's definitely a learning curve and interesting, but like I so far I've just published through Amazon and have done like the open, so it shows up on Barnes and Noble and stuff. But every time I try to do Ingham Sparks, I'm like, cause that like, do you want to return your books?
Oh yeah.
I'm like, no.
Yeah, I have yet to. I've been published since 2016, and I've yet to take my physical books wide. I've kind of made my ebooks and most of my audiobooks wide as of the beginning of this year, I'm able to sell any of the things that are labeled wide directly through my own shop. But yeah, I haven't done that whole physical thing. And the question is, do you go if you're choosing to go wide, Ingram Sparks, or some of these newer companies that are trying to get the slice of the pie of that market, like Draft to Digital, that's now trying to venture into physical print. So it's always, again, there's going to be, every day is going to be something else. And you're going to be like, I didn't know that existed. Wait, tell me more.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and it's fun because it's like, okay, that's different. Now I can look into that and try that and stuff. And
Mhm.
I'm looking for like my youngest is going into kindergarten next year, and I'm like, okay, she'll be in school, and then I don't have to I have more time to do all this and really put it as like my full-time job.
Mhm.
So it'll be interesting, like, and everything's new. Like, there's so many things that just keep popping up
Oh,
over
yeah.
like the last few months even, and I'm like, okay, um that's my goal. Next year is to start really like investing into more, looking into wide more, because I keep, I see the horror stories, and it's like, do I want to do that, or is this good, or where do I want to put myself and be in the next 5 years?
And here's the honest the truth thing. What works for one person is not necessarily going to work for another. So the trick is you have to figure out how you want to start, and then if and when you want to make a change, and how long you want to test that out, and then you decide. I mean, that really is the case for most things. Very few things in indie publishing are you make that one choice and you can never change it. There are a couple like that, but for most things is you can kind of go back and forth and figure out what works for you, because depending on your genre and depending on anything from like the social medias you choose to use and the genres you write, and everything goes into how successful and how people find your work and where they're getting it. So it's It's
Yeah.
something you just have to toy around with.
Yes, I agree. Well, and it's interesting. So, like, my husband just got into streaming too, and
Yeah.
so we're like learning all this different stuff. Like, he's got the setup now, and we keep adding to everything, and it's like, okay, um, just it's the same with like the publishing and stuff. I made my own cover. My first book, I made my own cover, and then um, I found like somebody mentioned get covers so that when I updated it, 'cause I originally published through a publisher,
Mhm.
and then I learned all the like little ins and outs of things, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be with this publisher anymore. The vanity publishers and all like, there's so many different things, and it's like it can be really overwhelming, especially as a new author and everything.
Mhm. And
So yeah.
that's the unfortunate thing. Vanity presses often prey on people who have never published before. They don't know what they're doing, and that's how they get a lot of authors. And then as soon as people kind of figure out, oh wait, it's not always like this, or it shouldn't be like this,
Yeah.
then you have to figure out what happens next. So I'm sorry that was your initial experience.
I lucked out. It was, I don't know what to call them, but they're traditional publisher, but because they didn't charge me. So I lucked out in that sense. But they gave me like I can't think of the word. Document to sign and everything, and they had promised they would do my cover, they would edit my book, they would do all that stuff. And so when we started through the process of publishing, they made my cover through Amazon, like like the
Yeah.
basic pop up. And so I was like, okay, well, I have I drew something, so I was like, use this instead. And then they formatted it, but they didn't actually edit.
Oh wow.
So I'm reading it and I'm like, okay, there's no edits, it's formatted really nice, but there's things missing. So it was up for about a year before I was able to like cancel the contract and be like, you didn't do anything. You haven't promoted it. They wanted me to pay $80 shipping and handling to get my, yeah, because it was a company through India, but they were, global, accepting authors and everything. I made I think I sold 15 books and I made $20.
Mm.
So it's like, that's, it wasn't, was not profitable or any, like, it didn't help me at all. And then, so now I have copies of this book that's like unfinished out there. And actually, come to find out, one of my husband's friends bought a copy and he's like, oh yeah. And he showed me and I was like, oh.
Well, you can have fun with that, and as your following grows over the time and years, you could probably say and tell that story and say, hey, if you have an oopsie copy, it's one of X many out there, and who knows, you could turn it and become a very collectible item.
Like that, that's the hope one day. Because what is it like? Oh, what's her name? I think Stephanie Meyer's like Twilight. I think she's got like, I think she had different covers than the one with the apple. And so people like have been finding them, and I'm sure they're worth quite a bit because I mean that cult following and those covers, from what I've seen, if it's not fake, they're really cringy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would. That's the dream, one day to be like, okay, cool. People have my really horrible first start and think it's worth something.
I've done most everything wrong the first time, and so yeah, the first time I released my debut book, I had a friend and I kind of collab, and we made my cover, and I was very happy with it because it kind of was, in my mind, of course, a newbie author, not really, you think everything is shinier and prettier than it probably is, but thought I was very happy with it. But for multiple reasons, including a bad cover, I've said this many times before, the right people weren't picking it up, or pretty much nobody was picking it up. And so I had to go through that process and do the deep dive and figure out, okay, for my genre and subgenre and the market I'm trying to go to, what do people want? And then find the cover designer who knew what I, needed for that, and have the covers now. And another great thing is trends change. And if you're an indie author, you can change along with the trends whenever you want, as long as you financially budget for it.
Yep, that's so true. That's so true.
But outside of that, then you can change, one a year for all you care. It's up to you. But thank you. But
What do you think of
yeah,
the like the authors that keep making new covers for the same book? And then have you seen that?
I know. Well, I've been getting into the Kickstarter things, and I know there are certain authors that do fantastically releasing alternative cover editions,
Yes.
and they're like usually exclusive. And again, first thing is you need to build a market. You need to build some kind of following. It's hard to start doing that from scratch. Thank you. But they do very well, and it's a way to maximize on the fact that we're not necessarily turning a book around a month. There are some authors who can do that, good for you, but
Yes.
most of us don't do that. And so in that interim, how can we continue to keep a buzz with the work we have? And there are different ways to do it. So I think that's a fascinating way of coming out with special editions. I'm actually going to release my first special edition of a complete series later on this year through a Kickstarter, and again, getting new covers, embedding character art and scene art, doing all that stuff. But it's the same stories that's been released, but it's going to be a little different. And my hope is, one, I can capture interest of people looking for a different image, a different, approach to the same story, as well as maybe get people who like my story and now really want all the extras, bells and whistles. So I'm okay with that.
I think that's really exciting. And are you gonna add like bonus scenes to it or just
I'm not sure about bonus scenes for this particular one. I will probably add for like a stretch goal, exclusive short story or something like that. But I'm not necessarily sure I'll do a bonus scene for this particular series, though. Depending on what I write going forward, I definitely can see that approach working well. But yeah, for me, it's going to be, again, I've never had a dust cover since I also print my hardcovers through Amazon, and they don't really do that. So this will be the first one where it's going to have a dust cover image. It's going to have the foil on it, and it's going to have sprayed edges, etc., so on. So it'll look really pretty, and yeah, that nice little showpiece. But just things to try. Hopefully it's successful, because if not, I'm going to be financially crying for a long time.
Well, I mean, and that's really exciting because like a year ago, I think it was, I was looking into the sprayed edges and trying to figure that out, and there was hardly anybody that did it. And now I'm noticing there's lots more companies, because as they become popular and stuff, there's more options now, and that's really cool. And I can't wait to see what your book looks like when you get that all set up and everything. That would be really cool.
Me too. Yeah, right now I'm waiting to get various art, because I'm commissioning 3 different artists for that project to do 6, 7, 8, 9 new pieces for that series. They're going to be two books that are going to have all that. So, woohoo! But
That's a lot.
yes. So I don't mind putting in the back of people's minds that that will be coming out toward the end of the year. Currently running a very streamlined Kickstarter for my upcoming book release for later on this summer. Very different approach, because this one's just to compensate, all those fun publishing costs. Sorry, I have a timer running. Fun publishing costs that we have to pay for in order to release a book. Oh, joy. But actually, let's go back to your stories for a second. So what are the names of your series? Let's go back and get to the meat of it. We don't get to some other things.
I'll show you. I have so I have Feral, and I'm backwards. But so this is Feral. This is my cozy horror. It's about a couple that move to start a homestead. Basically, they want to be away from the city life and just kind of start over. And they are warned about these like dogs in the area and stuff. Well, yes, I'm talking about dogs. My dog is like, you have talked about me. And things just kind of start getting weird around their house, especially after one of the dogs decides to move in. So and I don't have the book with me, but I made a parallel timeline. So it's the same story, but slightly different. So at first it's like it opens the same, but there's a little bit differences here and there, and then it completely evolves into a different story. But you got the same characters. It's an experiment. Like, I have so many different ideas with this, and so I just kind of want to see what people think with the kind of like Twilight Zone vibe. So if you read both, you're like, oh, this is the same, but now it's got a different vibe, and this is a little bit different, a little bit different. So
That's kind of cool.
yeah, I thought that was kind of fun. I have a couple of different ideas, for that. We'll see how that goes. And then I have Scout. And so this is my more mature book. This is Spicy. It's a serial killer horror author romance. So Scout is a serial killer.
Mm-hmm.
And she kills people who hurt others.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like a Dexter vibe.
Okay.
And her boyfriend through most of the book is completely oblivious to this. And he writes horror, and she just kind of like inspires his horror. It actually was inspired by a Tumblr post. I think it was like Tumblr, or I saw it on Reddit or something, like the screenshot, and it got shared around, and it was on TikTok a while ago, and I was like, and people were like, somebody write this, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll get it. Like, I'm gonna go after that. That's pretty cool. So that's where the idea originated and stuff. And there is a sequel to it, which kind of dives into the relationship and her relationship with her best friend. It's a little bit different. It's a little darker because the best friend gets kidnapped, so it's darker and a little more horror oriented. And this is the hardcover of the first one.
Ooh.
Yeah,
I like that.
I do. The artist for that is Christy Aldridge, and she does horror stuff, and she puts does the, what do you call them? Like, she makes a bunch of different covers, and then you can, like, if you find one that vibes, you can buy it and stuff.
The pre-mades or ready-mades or whatever they're called.
Yeah, so she had pre-made that, and I was like, oh my gosh, that has like the same vibe, and I love it. So I got that. This one I made myself, but the background, I don't know if you can see it very well, is actually a tie-dye t-shirt. So my sister does tie-dye, and I was like, can you make me a tie-dye t-shirt for this? And so they're awesome. They did that for me. Because the main character, Scout, hides her murders, like if she's got blood splattered on her shirt, by tie-dyeing them.
That's a fun little quirky thing. I feel like I could see you, I don't know if you ever sell direct or do book signings, but have some kind of like little tie-dye somethings and, maybe bookmarks or whatever, and, cut little cloth strips for that, but then again, tie it into your story.
Yeah, and I'm like, if I can get a little bit bigger and stuff, I want to commission her to make some more tie-dye shirts and then do boxes with that. So I thought that would be kind of cool with the, the fake blood splatter and everything. It's awesome. Their work is pretty good. She's under Mind Piles, and it's like, I'm like, can you make this? And she's like, yeah.
I was gonna say, I love some people's creativity of what they do for their book boxes. I don't know if you have followed or read one of the book talkers on here, Otto Schaefer. He does zombie apocalypse books, among other things, and his zombie stuff, when he packages them, looks really cool, like with caution tape and a bloody handprint and all that stuff. I mean, it's wild. So if you haven't checked him out, because that may inspire you with like coming up with some kind of horror book box. But he's pretty fantastic with his little one.
That's really cool. I just saw a video earlier, and I don't know if it was him, but they were doing a yellow handprint.
Oh, that's probably for his new book. Yeah, the red one was for the first one. I think he's on the third one now, and so each little box has its own slightly different vibe. But yeah,
I was like, that's really neat. The yellow handprint, and then like the caution tape stickers, and he signed it in yellow, and I was like, that's awesome. I need to get to that like level of coordinated.
Yeah, well, he didn't start off that way either. You can watch it slowly build out, and then all of a sudden you get to that threshold, and then you figure out exactly what you want to do, and you start catching fire, and so that's what we all want. That is the dream.
Yes, it is.
So you have 3 books out, or how many books out are available right now?
I think I think I have almost 10.
Ooh, wow,
Yeah.
fantastic.
That's right. Yeah. So I have the Journey series, which is under MK Richberger. Um, that's my first series. It's more fantasy. On the side, it's a slow burn, um, closed door kind of romance, but it really follows through the main character Ezekiel's life, and like so the second book is really intense because there's a war that was building up in the first book, um, and that one is my like the one I've been working on since I was like 17. So I'm like, it needs polishing, but that's where I was when I started publishing. And then I have two books out that are mafia romances that are fairy tale retellings.
Interesting.
And they are Riding Savage and Beastly Savage. So it's Beauty and the Beast for one, and Red Riding Hood is the other one, Riding Savage.
Nice.
And then I have the Scout and Pharaoh books, and a like short story collection, Earthworms and Other Twisted Stories. Have you ever heard like the that trend that went around? If Would you love me if I was a worm?
No, I think I missed that one. That's hysterical.
So that was really popular for a bit. Like people would text, their girlfriend, or it was girls texting their boyfriends and be like, "Would you still love me if I was a worm?" And then getting their reaction and then posting it. And I was like, "What if that was a romance?" So it's a short story, and in that book, it's graphic and just ridiculous, and it's meant to be funny. And the whole kind of collection, I think there's three or four. I can't off the top of my head, but yeah, they're just meant to be kind of funny, but like unnerving.
That's I love that. I absolutely love that. For me, one of the things I want to start getting into is submitting to anthologies and seeing if I can kind of get in some of those, because as authors, if you have these short stories and you don't know what to do with them outside of giving them away to maybe your some subscribers for your newsletter and so on, like what do you do with them? And one of the best ways, obviously, is anthologies, because then you can cross promote with so many other authors and hopefully get new readership, kind of back and forth. And I really want to start doing stuff like that. Yeah. So I applaud you for being able to write full size stories, and obviously able to put out some short stories, because for a lot of us, it's hard to do one and the other. Usually it's programmed one way or another.
Too. When I was like younger, I used to write just short stories all the time. I can remember being in kindergarten and just that's where I would be at, was writing and drawing stories and stuff. And so I like had started there and then did fan fiction for a while, like the fanfiction.net. And which is actually where my fantasy story came from, was like I was 17 and I was writing this story, and I was like, when I was 20, that story is just, it needs its own, like it needs to be rewritten in its own thing, because it just had always sat with me forever. And but that's been my progress, like these short little stories. And I did Vela while it was around for a little bit, and that's how I was able to make the money to start publishing the bigger books and stuff.
Well, there are also, I know Vela was there for respectively a short time, but there are other platforms that authors utilize for those kind of serialized series and ways to have alternate streams of income depending on what you write. There's Ream and Royal Road, and of course there's one of the older ones, Patreon. Though Patreon's not exclusive to writing, while some of the other ones are meant for just writing stories and putting them out there. But there are, and I think there's one for romance, and I wish I knew what that one's called.
Inkit, I tried to do Inkit because they I found them and I kind of posted on there, and then I stopped. And then they're like, if you post stories on here, every story or whatever you post will give you $20. So I was like, all right. So I uploaded, a few stuff, and they paid me. And then I think I eventually, I don't know, I might have some rough drafts still on there, but it didn't go anywhere because it wasn't like, so with like fan fiction, which was, obviously it was free and everything, the community, people just read to, they wanted to read. You wanted to read the stories. I made a good friend on there for a little bit, and we would read each other's stuff, and then it would just grow like fans and everything. And but Inkit was very, at least when I was there, it was like, I'll read yours if you read mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was very hard to get anybody that was just interested in reading and not cross promoting. And so it was more difficult to get into. And I met somebody through there who's very, very like successful on there, and that's awesome for that, for them and their book series and everything. But I found that I did better and was less under pressure when I started just to write for myself and then publish. And that's been kind of my journey for the last year and a half. I met a really good friend, and you're talking about the people that publish like once a month.
Yeah.
That's her. She is.
They do exist. I know a few.
She's amazing. Like, her name's Stephanie Swan. Stephanie Swan. Her stuff is like amazing, and she's got this back, log order and stuff going on, and so she writes a book, has it editing, and is writing another one, and so she can just continuously release, and it's like she's on fire. She's so like, I'm like, I don't know how you're so coordinated with all that. Like, I'm struggling with one book and I have 20 going. Yep.
No, it's, hey, everybody's process for writing is very different. So again, don't compare yourself to someone else. For years when I started, I worked on one project at a time, and then maybe if I sent it to an editor, I had a little time to kind of start preparing the next thing. But it really wasn't until COVID when, for a lot of authors I hear on here, they kind of, that changed everything for them. And for me, I took a lot of time writing books that I wasn't publishing yet. So I kind of built almost an unpublished backlog. So now I have this cycle where I'm working on a project, I have another one in an editor, another in format. So I am really, this year's a little different, but I have reasons. But for the last few years, and what's going to happen in the next few years as well, is I have a cycle where I am doing multiple releases throughout the year, and it looks like I'm writing really fast. It really isn't. I figured out a cycle.
Well, it's awesome. It's awesome to be at that point and everything. And she's super motivating. Like, I don't feel pressured at all by her, because we, like I said, we all have our own pace and everything. But I am so motivated, watching her become more and more successful, because she deserves it. Like, her stuff is fantastic. And I'm like, okay, so goals, like, I want to get where you're going. So, and just, she's one of those people that can do like everything. She makes her own covers, and they're phenomenal and stuff. So we've worked together and just learned different things. I like, from where she started a couple years ago when I first started reading her stuff to where she's at now. Like, the growth is amazing too. That's
great.
Yeah, so it's fun, like, learning and growing together with other people too. Like, you find these, like, since I started publishing and got into it, like, you kind of find like your people, and it's been fun. Like, I enjoy it, so that's why I'm sticking around.
Right. That's fantastic, because for me, when I started, I began working with a writing group, an in-person writing group, and that was kind of very motivational, because I didn't know what I was doing, and so it was interesting to pick people's brains and why someone was maybe looking for querying for traditional, why someone was indie, and every kind of thing. So that was a really neat part. And then unfortunately I moved away, and so I kind of lost contact with that group. And then for a while I was kind of felt like I was doing everything solo, and again, stumbling and learning things along the way. But it was a very slow process. But once you start building and connecting within the community, then I think that not only helps speed up your process of becoming a better author and your I mean, it's a job. It's a job. It does help because you have people to ask questions and bounce ideas off and check things and support you and all that kind of stuff. So definitely being able to find a community is, I think, very invaluable for a lot of young writers out there. When I say young, I mean newbies. People starting on their journey, as well as people who have been around for forever. Yeah. I always will accept another writing friend.
Yeah, and I agree. And it's like, and and I see like people just starting out and they're like, what do I do? And it's like, just write. And then worry about it. Yeah. Like I have a friend, he just started getting into writing. He really wanted, he's like, I really want to, but like, what do I do? Like, I'm not that good. And I was like, okay, start something and then go, because you won't progress if you're not even starting. So start somewhere. So he sent me a clip and I was like, okay, I'm going to give you a little perspective. I was like, you're at where I was like a few years ago. So you're doing good. And then, like the recommendations and stuff, like I went through a lot of YouTube videos just looking for advice and stuff. Cause I like to read, various things, but it wasn't like connecting, how are these, what is different? And then the YouTube videos like pointing it out or even dissecting like movie scenes and how they work. I was like, that was it. That was my like, okay, that aha moment of how to like make these scenes just a little bit better and stuff. And so I pinned it all and everything, and I will like, if anybody's like, oh, I need help, I send it to them because I'm like,
oh, that
like just support and stuff, because I feel like a lot of people don't get that. They're they have family or like, why don't you do something real? A real job, or okay, that's nice you're doing that. And so just kind of those like positive boosts and stuff, because I love to see new artists. I love to see new people getting into art and writing, because that's been my like passion since I was a kid. Like I said, I love to paint and draw and do all that stuff. So it's like that nice little, like, I love that, like, and I have kids now, so it's harder to do, but when it's like 2 a.m. and you're in that groove of like into a project, like I love that. So yeah.
And it actually goes to show like your level of motivation and dedication to your passions, because when you have, many people have day jobs and trying to find time to write. And then if you're having family and kids and, have other hobbies and friends, you need to do stuff, and still finding the time then to dedicate to your writing or your art or whatever you're doing, that just says a lot about the person, because not everybody follows through with that when they think about all the pressure of life.
Right. No, and and I'm working on a book. Like I said, I was working on this book, and I'm like, I've been editing the past 3 days, and I don't think a lot of people realize the amount of effort and time that goes into it, because I will spend hours just rereading and going through what I've already, and I'm like, okay, I'm tired. And it's got to be a good story if you're reading it 100 times. Like, it gets so. One of my friends was like, "Oh, that's so like you got to be excited about it." I'm like, it's exhausting.
Yes.
And I'm only halfway through the book, but I'm editing it because I'm doing like the line edits and trying to like polish things, and it's like, it's so much. And on top of it, like, I have books that I've started and I put away because I'm like, my writing skill level isn't where I want it to be with those. Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, I mentioned the Journey series. It's 3 books right now, and I have 6 total planned for it. Mm-hmm. And it's at least 6.
I know that is.
But it was like, it's just not there. So there's the 2 about the the main character Ezekiel and stuff, and then I have a side book that's a prequel that has nothing to do with him, but if you read the books, that it intertwines.
Mm.
And that one's a little more spicy. I think that series will be more spice heavy, open door and stuff, because that's just how those characters are.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to write that what fits with the characters. So, you know, not a lot of them have that series is like I said, it's a little bit, I would say 16 and up would be able to read it, be okay with it. And the rewrite definitely is more mature because more mature stuff. But it's just, I follow with those characters and what they're going through, and I try to be very like cautious and not, like, yeah, there's trends and stuff, but I don't want to throw in like full blown sex scene and spice and everything if it doesn't fit, just to follow that trend of, well, we want more smut.
Yeah.
And stuff. So I try to be true to those series and stuff, and that's why I have like Scout, because that's her character. It's the open door spice and very like, that kind of stuff. So I want to be able to have like a wide audience that can read my stuff, different people and stuff. And I have a 12-year-old, and I made the mistake of being like, hey, I'm working on a book for you. And now she's like, when's it done? I'm sorry, I have it outlined.
Yeah, but it's going to take a little longer. Yeah, a little longer. But no, I also like writing to a wide frame audience. I mean, starting with my youngest series is YA, and that's 12 and up. So you have the one series that could be 11-year, a well-read 11-year-old and older. Then I have my new adult and that adult series, and I do list a little bit more of the stuff that, especially that's going to be coming out, are on the more mature side of things. But it's nice to be able to have something for a younger audience, because you want to capture them when they are enjoying reading. Yeah. So many young people lose that joy due to school and feeling it's mandatory. And there is something to say, like, there are some great aspects of a lot of these literary classic books, but that may not be what you want to read for fun. And when that's all you're exposed to for a while, then you lose that joy. And so it's nice to be able to have something be like, here, have fun. Enjoy this magical multiverse. Enjoy this adventure. Enjoy this quest. Right. Go have fun.
So I have a 12-year-old, and she has always struggled with reading. And we found out when she was in second grade, she had hearing loss. And it's in such a way that it was hard to detect, because even when she passed her newborn hearing screening and all that stuff, I even took her to a pediatrician because I was like, something is off. And they were like, her hearing's perfect. It's fine. And I was like, because, you sit in the room with them when they do the hearing test, and she kept looking at me. And like, when she would, when it would beep, and I was like, no. So she's got this cookie cutter shape, like, hearing loss. So it's like low ends and some of the high ends and stuff. So words sound different to her, which is translates into you can't read. And because if you can't hear words correctly, learning those words are different. So she's finally has caught up. She's in 6th grade, and she has caught up to like where she should be at reading and stuff. And she had to do a book report, and it had to be like book to movie, or and then compare the two. And she was really, really struggling with it because she didn't like Harry Potter. And she doesn't like those heavy, like the thick books and stuff. She prefers comic books, and which I'm totally cool with. I'm one of those parents that, like, if you like it and it's comic books, totally read it. Like, I have a whole collection. Like,
hey, graphic novels are a thing. They have courses in colleges just on that genre. So
they're well, and I went to school for animation. Like, go for it, And but I was like, she was struggling. I said, why don't you try Twilight? And she was like, and I told her, it's a romance book, and she was, horrified. Romance, mother. And I'm like, but it's vampires, and you might like it. She listened to it on audiobook. Then she watched the movie, and then she watched 2 of the movies without me. I was just like, wait a minute. You're like, and she's like, and so we bonded over that. But yeah, like, there's got to be just, you can't just keep putting in the same thing to these kids. You need to read this because this is what, it's expected of you. They have to branch out a bit and stuff. And not everybody likes the same stuff.
That's
You know,
true.
I liked Of Mice and Men when we read it in school. I thought it was an interesting book, and I liked, I think the other one was Anthem, and not many people, they're like so boring. And I was like, but it was weird. It was a weird take, like, and I like that.
I liked the Odyssey and the Iliad when I was a child, and I still do. So, but I would never tell someone to sit down and read an unabridged version of that unless they really sound like that's their interest, because it's not for everybody. I get it.
And that's where I'm like, I just, I want her to read, and I like that people are reading more and doing, involved, because it does seem like more and more people are wanting to pick up books and read. And now we have like, audiobooks, and so, people that are having vision problems or even like ADHD can listen. And then we have the digital book. I'm reading more than I ever have because I can just pull it up on my phone and read. And I don't have to carry around a book, which was kind of like, I've always loved to read, but I always felt like I didn't have time.
Yeah.
And now
The benefit now of these digital formats is, you could have your phone or an iPad and just flip up, your book, and you have your whole library with you, or audiobooks. And again, with the people who have anything from sight impediments to dyslexia to, the lack of time to sight issues, hearing a book read aloud, it's still an engaging way to read a book. So yeah. I definitely agree. Now, let me interject though, because the hour is speeding on by, and I do want to always make sure I ask a couple questions every time, because if this platform is nice, most of the time it is, sometimes it's not, I'll repurpose this video and put it onto my YouTube channel for people to come and reference, and I'll put all your information down below. But for everybody here, and let me ask, where can people find and follow you outside of Book Talk? What other socials? Do you have a newsletter? Do you have a website? That kind of thing.
You can find me on Instagram, so it's the same as my name on here. That makes it easier. And I'm also on Facebook. You can follow me. It's the same. It's MK Richberger. And those are really the two places. I just Instagram, and I do have a X account, but I'm never on there. So.
Yeah. Okay, I think a lot of authors have moved away from that platform. There's some that still love it, and that's, to each their own. It never worked for me, so I have one. It's like a bunch of auto posts. I'm rarely on there. It really
am. Yeah, I struggled with figuring it out. I don't know, and I'm really have been kicking up my TikTok and Instagram more, trying to figure that out a little bit more. I am on Pinterest. It's the same, like. It's just my same posts go to Pinterest. Ooh. So, if that's your thing, you want to be on Pinterest and pin stuff, like, you can find me on there. Same name and everything.
Hey, Pinterest is a fun visual too, depending on if you like to make boards of characters or whatnot. It's another way just to engage with your readership. It's not necessarily one to build a readership, but it's one to further engagement. So it all just depends on what you want to do. But okay, other thing is, where can people get your books? We've mentioned this a little earlier, but just to rehash, where can people buy your books, and what formats are they available?
You can find them all on Amazon, and it's ebook, Kindle Unlimited. I have the softcover and hardcover for most of them. So for Scout specifically, like, if you order hardcover, it's this version, because I just wanted something different. And then this is the soft cover. I do have an alternate cover and black pages for my Mafia, but you have to specifically ask that because I removed it because Amazon cannot, like, the quality, they can't promise it. So I've gotten, like, I ordered 20 of them and half were kind of messed up, and they're like, well, that's what you get. So it's like, So if you want black pages, I do have that specific, and you can get them through me.
Very intriguing. I've never attempted black pages or the tinted pages thing yet.
Yeah.
It is always fascinating to me when people utilize that. I mean, it is eye catching for sure.
It is.
But
It's cool.
let me also ask you, and for anybody else who's listening and wants to chime in, is there any question that you wanted to ask but you haven't had a chance, or any topic you wanted to cover that you haven't gotten a chance to cover yet?
I cannot.
Always put you under the gun, like right at the end. Everyone's like, what? It's like the most basic question. You're like, wait, that's so general. It's hard for me to figure an answer.
I'm really bad with like anything.
Oh.
What kind of question do you have? I don't know. Think of one for me.
That's okay. That's okay. Also, do you ever do live events or anything at this moment in time? Because I don't know if you
No,
ever.
I haven't done any live events yet. Because I haven't really figured that out yet. Because ordering books and everything and having, I need a little bit more of a budget to do that.
Yeah.
But I do. So I'm in the Lansing area, and there's a little small bookshop, like indie bookshop. It's called Dead Time Stories. Sometimes my signed books are in there. So
What area did you say?
Lansing.
Lansing? Okay.
Mm-hmm. So they're awesome. Like that would be like my cozy horror will be there, like this. So once I get a new shipment and stuff, and they're awesome in there. So.
And that's one thing, if anybody listening in is interested in writing, is if you have, especially the mom and pop bookshops and stuff like that, it never hurts to just ask and say, hey, would you carry this? The worst thing they're going to say is no.
Yeah, no, and a lot of times
usually like throw the book in your face, they're usually just going to be like, no, thank you, or whatever, and then you move on. But it's a great way, especially in your local area or areas, to have your books in a physical bookshop, especially if outside of that you're pretty much exclusive through Zon or something like that.
Right, and I'm trying to set up a website so I can sell books and stuff through that too. That's slow.
It takes a while to figure all that out. Yep.
Yeah, my husband is helping me with that, but he does, he works computers and stuff. But he's been busy, so I'm hoping this summer we can get it up and going because we got some time off.
Nice.
So that's it to be announced.
I like that. Yeah, no, it took me, I don't remember how long it did, from trying to figure out everything to finally finalizing everything for my own bookshop, for my website. It's just, again, it's like everything. There's a lot to learn, and if you don't know the questions to ask, you kind of are like stumbling around a little while until you figure them out, and it is a process. It's a process.
Do you sell your books on BookTok?
Sorry, what?
Do you sell your books through BookTok?
Funny story. Okay, so I do have a book talk shop. I almost never make sales through it, and most people, even when I'm doing ads through that shop front, because it's a different interface, different account.
Yeah.
People still want to buy from a website, and I'm like, that's okay. So most of my sales come through my website anyways, and I don't know if that's just someone's comfortability. They just want to trust that method. I don't care because it's coming to me anyway, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, for the most part, it's through my website's bookshop versus the TikTok shop, but I have both. And they're all interconnected in the background, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, BookTok it was hard for me to even get a shop. Like, I don't have anything in it, but I was trying to apply for it, and it took like 100 tries.
Yeah, it took a while. Even when I have all this stuff, they always, like, once a year, they always are like, when I have to, like, re-up or something, and they're like, yeah, we need some new document, or we need some. I'm like, again, guys, why are you making this so complicated? But yeah, no, for me, I enjoy having my own websites shop. I go through Shopify, and because I also sell direct, I use BookFundle to distribute like the ebooks and the audiobooks, and obviously I have my own physical copy, author's copies at the house that I package and stuff like that. So, but yeah,
do you sell ebooks through your website?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, because I've heard, I wanted to look into that, but I'm like, I don't know with Amazon and doing KU. So that's kind of...
See, that's the thing is, if you're in KU, you technically can't do that. I'm sure there are authors who do it and are just hoping not to get caught, but technically that's a no-no. That's a breach of contract if you're in Kindle Unlimited. You can still be on Kindle and then sell direct, and then, if you want to move wide and all that. And so that's what I've done is I pulled out my books from KU, put them on my website shop first as I was trying to figure out which way I wanted to route them going wide. And so towards the beginning of the year, started using Draft to Digital to distribute them widely available. So they're on, the Nook and Barnes and Noble's catalog and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah. I think that's going to be like my next step with everything, trying different things, but.
And the nice thing about that, as long as you wait you put your request and you just have to time it right with KU and pulling out because you have that 90-day contract that they re-up. Once you're through with that wait period, then, you can take it and do whatever you want with your books. And then if they don't work, you can always put them back in.
Right. And that's what I like about KU too, because it's like, you don't have to, it's a 90-day contract, so it's not like you're stuck there for a year or anything. You can always back out later. So
and just make sure you do it correctly, because that was one thing. And again, I do everything wrong once. I had all my ebooks pulled out, and then I went back on to just like check things and get things, so I could start distributing them directly. And I realized one of my books somehow I did not pull one of them, and it was the first book of one of my series. So then that whole series was like, womp womp. Wait another 90 days.
Oh, that would be lesson learned.
Lesson learned. But there were so many lessons to be learned.
Yeah, true.
That's the sad truth. Well, if I'll let you is there any announcements you want to make about upcoming books or projects at this moment in time? And if not, we'll kind of start moving to the wrap up.
Well, you can be on the lookout for. I don't have a timeline. It's sometime in this next year. I'm working on a horror that will be for a charity for my local humane society. They don't know about it. It's based on a loss. You can look at my website on my TikTok. I have stories. I'm pretty sure you can. I'm not going to say much because. But you can gather what it will be about based on the recent TikToks and stuff. Mm-hmm. So that I am working on. So that's to be on the lookout for that.
Well, I hate to say I'm excited about that because, depending on the spec of the story and the meaning behind it, probably not, the most scary.
But yeah.
But that's a wonderful thing that you're doing. Anytime I hear an author trying to write something or donate something to a charity or fundraise for a nice organization, that's always a wonderful thing. Mm-hmm. For myself, I don't have any charitable things to announce, but I am running my current Kickstarter for another 2 weeks, and that will be for my young adult adventure and quest-based portal fantasy, also known as Isekai, set in a magical multiverse, and this will be for the 5th book, though you have options for all the prior books, including the first one, the 12 tasks, and again, that is backwards, I know. But that is my only announcement I have at this moment in time.
That's a good one.
It's kind of, what we do is we talk about our writing. Anywho, thank you so much for hanging out for this past hour. It's lovely to meet you, kind of virtual face to virtual face, but it's been lovely to get to know you and all the projects you have, because you have a lot.
Yes. It's an understatement.
You definitely have a lot. And if you ever want to jump on another one of these, I do them weekly. I plan them in advance, though. But feel free to reach out to me in the future, maybe after your next release, if you wanted to get back on and hang out again.
Cool. Thank you.
And everybody's been listening in. Thank you. And until next time, everyone, have a wonderful week.
Bye. Have a good day. Yeah.